Well, hello, and welcome back to another exciting edition of Coffee with Stephen. This blog is kind of a follow-up to last week's blog. I wrote about the Kate Steinle murder in a blog entitled Murder by the Bay. And one of the things that seemed to generate a tremendous amount of response from you guys had to do with the rules of evidence as it related to the defendant's immigration status. I had mentioned in my blog that I thought that it was probably appropriate that the judge keep the fact that the defendant was an illegal alien out of the ears of the jury. The argument being that that information was more prejudicial than it was probative. Many of you don't like that, and I totally understand the rationale behind that. I'm not a particularly big fan of it myself, but in this particular instance, we have to look at the rules of evidence for the specific thing that they are intended to do as it relates to the case, and I think, like I said, the judge made the appropriate decision. Well, today, over this last week, we had a similar case. Now, similar not so much in the actual fact pattern of the trial, but similar as it relates to the rules of evidence. Some of you may remember about a year ago, there was an officer-involved shooting where a police officer using an AR-15 shot and killed a suspect, somebody who ultimately turned out to be an unarmed suspect. Well, that officer was acquitted. Now, at the time that the officer was prosecuted, and first and foremost arrested and then ultimately prosecuted, one of the aspects of the case had to do with one of these, a little dust cover. And for those of you who own an AR-15, you know exactly what this is. A lot of us will personalize our dust covers. As you can see, we've got the Diligentia Viscellaritis written on this one. Well, he had a dust cover that was personalized that said, "You're effed" across it. It had an expletive, okay? This was introduced into evidence, and the minute that it was, all of the armchair lawyers out there began screaming, "I told you so, I told you so." If you do anything to your weapon, if you color it, if you put on any sort of paraphernalia, if you wear certain garments, that's going to be used against you at trial. And here you go. This officer had this personalized dust cover with frankly, an inappropriate statement written on it, and now it's going to be used to hang him. Well, the statement that was written on the dust cover was kept from the presence of the jury because, once again, it was deemed to be more prejudicial than probative. The question at bar was not whether or not this law enforcement officer was a bad guy or was harboring some sort of ill will or anything like that. The question at bar was extremely simple. Was the officer's actions at the time reasonable given the set of circumstances that he was facing? The jury ultimately acquitted the officer last week. And if you watch the video from the body cam footage, you can see it was probably the correct decision that the jury made. As it related to the dust cover, one of the reasons why it was kept out of trial was that they didn't want the jury convicting the officer simply because they didn't like the personality of the officer. None of us wants to be found guilty of a crime, not because we didn't necessarily do the crime, but we are either acquitted or convicted as a direct result of our personality. Once we go down that road, our justice system becomes essentially a sham. Anyways, I know it was a long-winded video blog. I apologize for that. Read the story. I hope you get something out of it. As always, if you have any questions, you can email me at stephen@artemishq.com. Remember, train constantly, train consistently, train with purpose, and stay safe out there. Until next week when we have coffee together, thank you for watching.